There has been a lot of hate directed at, like, teenage media at the moment. Like Jordan Teresa's coming of age in TV and film, mental illness, toxic relationships, and the male gaze. Or Mina Lee's The Problem with Teen Dramas. I actually also like that Mina Lee did a positive review of sex education, and this video is not made to like debunk any of the points that Jordan or Mina make, nor am I like coming for these creators or something. Actually, I would encourage you to watch their videos because they're great. What I actually want is share my personal experience with teen TV shows and how the possibly clickbaity title says, like, saved my life or, yeah, helped me survive, actually. There are, of course, a lot of problems with teen TV shows, and I can't even wholeheartedly defend the TV shows I like, let alone the ones I dislike. But it's actually, like, a little bit too easy to criticize teen media. I think Twilight is, like, the prime example. Like, do you remember when everybody in the internet was, like, criticizing how toxic the relationship in Twilight were? And, like, don't get me wrong, the relationships in Twilight are toxic, but now we get this whole, like, Twilight renaissance, because we millennials now actually remembered why we liked it so much as teens. And teenagers right now are really into it, like the glittery, trashy 2000s artifact that it is. In this video, I'm going to be talking about my own teen fave skins, but also new shows like Grand Army and Sex Education. All of these shows help me to process my own past experience so much. I am the last person to be like, oh, but it's fiction, so you can't criticize it because it's fictional, or to think that it's completely improbable that actual teenagers are going to be copying harmful behavior that they see on screen. You can probably already tell that there is going to be a lot of discussion of some dark stuff in this video, but I still want to keep it as like light and fun as possible. So when I do discuss some possibly triggering stuff, I will put trigger warnings at the beginning and make it easy to skip to the next chapter in the video. So if you haven't seen Skins, then what are you doing here? Go and watch it. Like, if I ever tried to describe Skins, it is a drama TV series. And like the dramatic element is not necessarily in its like aesthetics, not in the music or the lighting or something like this, because the characters are actual teenagers and they could also like co-write the script, etc. So I think the setting and everything, like the locations and the clothing and stuff, it's all quite authentic. But like the things that happen in the plot are like over the top. It does follow a group of characters that, as I said, are played by actual teenagers, and they are introduced one by one in each episode. So each episode carries the name of one of the characters and tries to show us why they act the way they do. And I feel like the criticism that is thrown at Skins the most is one that it's like unrealistic. The characters in Skins do engage in super unsafe situations, but it is shown that this happens because of neglect, mostly like emotional neglect by their parents, and also like their surroundings in general, like the school, all the authority figures just completely failing to support them.
Look, give me a moment. I'm sure I can come up with some... No, sorry.
And you see this again and again in the show. So if you find this lack of support unrealistic, then I'm sorry to break it to you, but you probably were quite privileged. If you only had to worry about your homework and like getting into uni and stuff, then you probably had a privileged upbringing. And that's not a bad thing. Like, you're lucky. So I wanted to read a comment because I collected some comments from Jordan's and Mina's videos. As someone living in a third world country and being of a lower class, messed up teenage movies always seemed realistic to me. It is unrealistic to have all movies portray teens like that, but we can't act like it's not the truth for many, especially if you're poor and POC. But another thing contributing to this feeling of like it's unrealistic is probably the use of like, I don't know if it's the best word to describe it, but like surrealist elements in skins. Because there are scenes sometimes when you actually don't know if what's happening is like real in the world of skins.
Come on, Dub. One last thing, Cassie's gonna run.
Oh yeah, the chances you got.
So here I want to put a trigger warning for eating disorders.
But I had to stop before I died because otherwise it wasn't fun. You wouldn't understand.
You're wrong, Cassie.
Cassie struggled with an eating disorder, and here she again voices her problems, and then the teacher she's talking to reacts with like sort of questioning her assumptions, and then she condemns this behavior, but not by saying like, oh, you're wrong, but like asking the right questions for Cassie herself to admit that she would have died if she would not have stopped like not eating. Something that I've heard read while researching was that some people took Cassie's showing Sid how she avoids eating as a tutorial for their eating disorder. And I just wanted to emphasize that I don't think that the Skins showrunners meant it to be a tutorial in any sense. I mean, of course they didn't, but I feel like they not only just did not mean it as a tutorial, but they also like filled the show to the brim with messages about how it's important that Cassie eats. So I will now watch first the scene where Cassie shows Sid how she doesn't eat, and then I will watch the scene where she ends up eating in the end of the episode.
It's like nobody's fucking business. And it's not exactly like anybody cares, so...
I care.
So, eat.
I feel like Cassie thinking that nobody cares is mostly due to her parents completely neglecting her and overlooking all of her concerns.
Cassie! How are you doing, kiddos?
And then, like, the little attention that she gets from Sid, or even from the random taxi driver who finally, like, who is there for her, who is there for her to help her to eat. This attention is actually all she craves. Honestly, I mean, I don't have an eating disorder, never had, and I'm not sure if I'm the right person to comment on this specific thing, but I feel like, I guess I relate to this comment. I remember feeling seen by some aspects of Cassie, although I've never had an eating disorder. I also had undiagnosed autism, and it was nice seeing someone a little bit weird and different. I really felt seen by the show, because I felt like so many of the kids around me at school weren't going through the same things I was, but Cassie was. So I'd now like to jump to Liv's character in season 6, and for this there is again the next trigger warning, this time for loss, as one of the characters dies in the first episode, and then the others are left to deal with this death.
It was there.
We'll get Dr. Gavin to have a look.
My friend died.
So what happens here is that Liv is like experiencing symptoms of like a tumor or something on her body and like her stomach, and then when she actually goes to the doctor, there's nothing there. So apparently she just like imagined it, or it was like a manifestation of her feeling of loss of her friend who died. And I've never seen like something like hypochondria accurately portrayed in a TV show before, and this episode with Liv really hit home. You can also check out my hypochondria video later if you want. I also feel like Liv seems so strong and extroverted and like sexually liberated and stuff like this, so you wouldn't think she would actually go through something like this, but it actually shows that this like outward, I guess it could be perceived as like in racialized terms like aggression or something, like, you know, aggressive black girl.
Shit, no. Like I said, nobody calls you out. Nobody can say it.
But then in the end, she is the one who is like super sensitive and really wants the others to face their feelings. And I guess that makes her like weak in some people's eyes, but in my eyes, I just feel like she shows a different kind of strength. And I also think that Liv actually feels super lonely because nobody is there for her, nobody is there to take care of her, and she actually really needs this care. So another comment I found was this, like, did their parents just not care where they are or something? And I honestly feel like it's so easy to answer, like, no, they didn't. And I feel like this comment actually shows pretty well from which perspective some people are coming who like criticizing skins for not portraying the like kind of healthy relationship with their parents that they had. And I mean, I'm all up for like healthy relationship representation. We need this. We need like healthy relationships on TV. But I don't think we should just completely throw away all portrayals of like unhealthy relationships if they are like properly criticized, which Skins does. Skins does show that like the neglect of most characters' parents actually creates super unhealthy situations. And I feel like kids from like unhealthy circumstances actually are the ones who look for like this feeling of care and understanding in media. Of course, being like super cared for and having a great relationship with your parents is not the only reason for like having strict rules in your home and not being able to enjoy the freedom that the kids in Skins do. This comment here says, I'm a teenager and I relate to these shows. But do you not see how messed up that is? You're a child, and I'm not blaming you, but these shows are heightened depiction of trauma. Using adults to portray children having sex, doing drugs, etc. is really intense and weird, and often does not serve any purpose but to be scandalous. The person who commented this is acting as if like addressing and portraying trauma is a bad thing, but I think it's actually a great thing because studies actually show that the like development of PTSD happens if the traumatic event is not addressed. Like there is a correlation between development of PTSD and avoidance behaviors. So what that means is some people just do not develop PTSD. They don't get PTSD even though they have experienced trauma because they properly address it. Like they, first of all, they understand the trauma as it is and they see themselves as a survivor and they are able to discuss the traumatic event with their surroundings. Like they have people around them who care for them and who can discuss with them what happened to them. And if it's not addressed, if people like dismiss it and don't address it as trauma or think it's normal or something like that, or like don't believe the person, this is when PTSD actually like develops. I think even if it's like a TV show, something like this can really change how somebody views their own experience. It can prevent PTSD, I guess. Then there is this comment. I grew up with Skins and it was still airing just as I reached high school and I loved it. It definitely romanticized self-destructive behavior though. I was diagnosed with mental illness really young and seeing characters on screen with the same issues as me was comforting. I used to think it was awesome that parts of my life were like an episode of Skins until it helped influence a lot of risk-taking behaviors in me and my friends. Then it became terrifying. I think at the core of this problem, or in general of like the way how people talk about Skins and teen TV shows in general, is the question of when is something glorification and when is it just representation. And I guess I'm all for like the representation part because I feel like it's kind of similar to like people saying that like portraying obese people is kind of like glorifying obesity, or that like spreading homosexual propaganda makes children like turn gay or something. And I feel like it's absolutely ridiculous and it doesn't work like this. If you see a character portrayed in a certain way, you will not develop like a mental illness or different sexuality. If children do try to like emulate or copy complete personalities of like TV show characters without understanding the stories that the shows are like trying to tell them, I feel like it's also a problem of like media literacy. If you see a character like Cassie or like Effie and you think, I want to be like them, they're cool, they have like cool clothes, they're pretty, and then to be like cool and pretty, you think you have to be like mentally ill. I guess you didn't understand the story that Skins was trying to tell you, because Skins is like over and over showing that these like illnesses are like something that harms these characters, and misunderstanding it comes from like misunderstanding the whole story. And I guess Skins can't teach you media literacy. That's something that your parents and your school should be doing. So speaking of representation, I think Skins did have its issues. Like, one of the things that come to mind is the like change in Frankie's appearance from season 5 to season 6, where in season 5 she was like a super tomboyish, even like sort of like non-binary character, and then in season 6 she's like dressed like a typical girl, I guess, like really feminine and stuff. And if a human being did this, I would not comment on it at all. Like, go you. Actually, when I first saw it, I was like, oh yeah, go Frankie, and I didn't mind. But like, in retrospect, I feel like it's not a real person, it's a decision that the creators made, and they did make the decision to make their first like sort of androgynous, gender non-conforming character into like a feminine girl. And then also the problem with asexuality, I guess, like the completely lack of any even like thought of asexuality, and that every character who at first didn't have as much sexual interest, like Panda for example, ended up developing this interest. While there is still no real asexual representation in the TV show Sex Education, there is like a passing asexual character who is only there to get like woke points for addressing asexuality, and then she completely disappears. And there is no real fat representation either. The only fat character, I mean, the actress ended up losing weight, so I guess it's not the show's problem, but she was the only one and now she's not fat anymore, so... SE doesn't have any like not super pretty characters, no characters with acne. But I feel like SE does have a better representation overall, like dark skin black characters in leading roles like Eric. And there is like a cast of main characters, but also each episode there is like another student from the school where they're at who is like a different kind of like sexual concern. And I feel like this creates a huge variety of characters, and I really enjoyed Carl as an NB character. I do have to say that I also like the conflict with Jackson. I mean, not that I like the situation that Carl was in, but I like that it was addressed.
If this was going to become more serious, then you would be in a queer relationship. Is that okay with you?
I feel like this conflict is really important in like showing that Carl's identity is not just a form of like, I don't know, artistic self-expression or something, but actually something that like influences their relationships and their place in the world in a way. The fact that they like make sure that Jackson knows that if he does react to his feelings and does pursue a relationship with Carl, then he would become queer. This kind of validates Carl's identity in my eyes, even though, I mean, I was a bit sad that Jackson like couldn't go through with it. I mean, it was also super expected from like a previously like straight cis dude to not be able to just overcome like his feelings and his like, I don't know, shame or something. But it made clear that Carl's identity has actual, tangible, real life consequences. Like even this small incident made me feel really seen in a way, and it was really amazing. But as SE is actually like, I feel like it portrays itself very much like a sex positive kind of TV show. I wish they would explore relationships more, because sometimes, like especially this like theater performances that they did in season 2 and season 3, they just feel very theatrical, in your face, like oversimplified in a way. I mean, you can't be sex positive without addressing the like really hurtful aspects of relationships and sex. I mean, Lily was really hurt because she was really othered because of her like sexual fantasies. I want to talk about Amy's storyline now, so I will put another trigger warning for sexual assault. So, Amy was sexually assaulted in a bus, which made her not want to enter this bus ever again. And the only reason why she does enter it again is because other girls support her and join her and like sit with her in the bus. So what I found really important was how like carefully they portrayed this whole situation with Amy. Like, it wasn't just a one-time event that just like resolved in the next episode. It was something that she carried with her over several seasons of the TV show. And then even in the scene in the bus when the girls join her and show her their support, they make her be able to enter the bus again, but the feelings of guilt and self-hatred are not resolved. She still has to go to therapy even after. She has to like live with it and be burdened by this whole situation. It's actually really like considered by the writers in a very sensitive way that is, like, for me at least, not too triggering. But some parts of SE feel like sort of girl boss, sex boss to me. Like, even parts of Amy's storyline, like her vagina baking is really like screaming sort of like turfy feminine energy to me. I don't know if you know what I mean, but I feel like it's giving celebratory vibes, making a celebration out of it, like this theater plays do. It just feels weird to me. I don't know. I wish for some kind of more like, I mean, it sounds weird, but like sort of like sex negativity, or like even, not even sex negativity, but like sex neutrality, where like, yeah, it's happening and people do it and it's fine and it's nothing to be ashamed of, but it's not like the goal of life or something. What I also feel is that SE really like focuses more on the purely sexual questions than the ones of relationships. But actually, these two are completely inseparable. And trying to be like, oh yeah, we're gonna talk about like condoms and stuff, but not talk about power dynamics in relationships. You can't really talk about one without talking about the other. But instead of addressing them, SE actually allows several toxic and really like strangely power like imbalanced relationships to go on.
Layla.
In contrast to SE, Grand Army was way more like sex neutral and serious. But I don't think serious is necessarily like a good thing, because I actually did enjoy the lightheartedness and fun of SE, and SE never triggered me in ways Grand Army did. Like, I didn't have to skip any of the scenes in SE, but I did have to do this in Grand Army. I generally felt like Grand Army was affecting me way more. Like both Skins and SE, Grand Army follows a set of characters. This time it's neither like one episode per character, nor does it keep introducing new stories, but it just follows the like core set of characters and skips between them, like tries to show all of their like lived experience in one episode, which I feel like also is contributing to this like sense of like overwhelm, and like some people were writing like trying to portray all the issues in every episode, which is simply like impossible and exhausting. I feel like the issue that they maybe focus the most, also because of the writers' focus on it and because they spend the most screen time on it, is like Joy's storyline. And here again, like a super heavy trigger warning for sexual assault. I feel like it's also because the show is based on I think it's the screenplay, Slut, by the creator of the show.
He seemed nice.
Yeah. What's wrong, Joe?
Nothing's wrong.
Joey has been assaulted by her own friends, like by her own friend group, which is, of course, super heavy. Having her grapple with like her own guilt and her own feeling of not just like hurt and shame, but also deep, deep, deep betrayal is so intense and so like, I don't know, close to my heart. I think the thing that touched me the most about Joy's experience is that it's so seldomly portrayed in general, like on TV and books, like in all media, that the most common perpetrators of sexual violence are people you know. I would now like to compare Joy's therapy scene and Amy's therapy scene.
Are you sleeping?
Not really.
What that man did to you on the bus has nothing to do with your smile or your personality.
I get everybody's fascination with Jean and how everybody adores her. I mean, she says nice things and she's right, but I wish she would understand that her saying these things does not fix everybody's problems at once. That it's not like Amy or whoever else comes to her counseling just needs short reassurance, and then they will know, oh yeah, it's fine, I'm over it, it's not my fault. And it's nice that she's telling this to Amy, but I feel like the therapist in Joy's case is way more kind of stepped back and just asks Joy how she's feeling and if she's sleeping. It seems more realistic. It's just what it is. It's less oh, I'm gonna tell you the solution and you will get over it, and more wow, yeah, this is fucked up shit. In the end, I'm not sure if the realist portrayal of Joy's struggle is really better. As I said, I'm not sure if realism is better. I like that SE is kind of careful with how far it goes in portraying emotions. But in general, both Amy's and Joy's stories are super important to see on TV. Actually, I think that Grand Army would be way better if the creator just decided to stick with Joy's storyline and just tell the story. And that's it, because what she actually ended up doing is trying to portray this diverse cast of mostly POC characters, but then still give the most screen time to the only white protagonist, Joey. I did love the diversity, and I especially loved Dominique's character. I feel like she deserved everything.
I want to make sure I do what I can to make sure my people get the things that they need.
And yeah, some black characters in the show get some happy endings or stuff like this, but most of them don't. And even if Dominique does get this one internship, she's still in the same circumstances that are still being portrayed as all this struggle and no fun. Not as much fun as the white characters. There's also so much talking, all this woke ass monologues in every episode, and too little change that would actually benefit the black characters. And there is a reason for that. There is a reason why it's so kind of over focused on Joey, but then again all this woke points, and there is a reason for that, and this is behind the scenes. So here is again an explicit trigger warning for racism. Mink Pfeiffer tweeted, because the showrunner wouldn't listen to the 3 writers of color, of which I am one, including the black writer who kept asking to not make her storyline poverty porn. When we tried to change the story, we were psychologically abused and all quit. Looking at that, I'm actually glad that Grand Army got cancelled. Even though I really liked it, I felt like it was one of the most intense and touching TV shows that I saw lately. But I also think that was mostly due to the really amazing performances of the actors. What about all the other teen TV shows, you ask? So from the ones that I saw, Pretty Little Liars is absolute fucking trash with the most toxic relationships. And spoiler alert, the most fucking transphobe resolution I have ever seen. Elite is a guilty pleasure, to be honest. I watched everything and I'm finding it really kind of sexy and exciting, but it's also so problematic. I feel like Control Z is kind of similar, even though it's so different in the classist aspect and the class aspect itself, the class issues being addressed way more, but they're both similar in the way how everything's just so unethical. Feel free to ask me about other TV shows in the comments and I'll tell you if I've watched them and if I like them. And don't forget to subscribe.